Hi, I'm Matt Lovell, and it's great to be here today to chat through 6 of the best elite health hacks to achieve major fitness goals. It started off as 5, but now it's 6. It could easily be 10, actually. And so we're recording this talk so you can have this offline. You may well be on one of the groups where we'll deliver it live, but this you can listen back to and for your notes and own personal use. So this morning we're going to talk through these 6 areas. So hydration, sleep, fat loss, and something called metabolic flexibility. We'll touch on inflammation, the all-important immune system boosting, and then we'll cover a very important area which I think is vital for health and long-term performance: alkaline diet and drinking the right kind of water. So a little bit about me. I've been a clinical nutritionist, performance nutritionist, whatever you want to call it, for over 20 years now. So I'm in my 21st year as a professional. I was working before that in high-end personal training, and so really been doing the health and fitness stuff for years and years and years. Started it all off when I was about 12 years old, when I first walked into a karate gym in school, but that's another story for another time. I suppose the point of this slide is really to show the length and depth, really, of the exposure I've had to different medical teams, different sports, different athletes, and my role in really helping them all, improve their function. But it's not just been elites. I've also spent loads of time working with normal people, everyday people. And a lot of what I do is about how the athlete model, what we do with athletes and how that translates into the real world, active individuals, keen exercisers, or what the Americans call, soccer mums, just busy people who do a little bit of fitness and want to feel and perform at their best with minimum, niggles and health concerns along the way. Now, there's hundreds of examples of little protocols and how they help people, but a couple of good ones that spring to mind just now. One was an athlete who's had such bad knee pain, rugby player. He was actually really reliant on a powerful anti-inflammatory called Voltarol. So whilst these types of anti-inflammatory are highly effective at pain moderation and lowering inflammation, they're a little bit indiscriminate in their actions, in that they'll shut down all inflammation, including the inflammatory pathways you need to heal. So short-term use, of course, but if you want to heal up in the long term, not a fantastic idea to be using them all the time. And with him, we actually switched him on very high-dose fish oil, so a powerful natural anti-inflammatory, combined with plenty of naturally occurring collagen from bone broth, but we'll come on to that in a bit. So he got both anti-inflammatory benefits plus rebuilding nutrients from collagen matrix, and fortunately enough played another 8-9 seasons. So I suppose one of the things we're trying to do in my role in sports is create resilient athletes and ultimately create resilient individuals. Resilience is something that's banded around quite a lot these days with all this sort of mindfulness practices and breathing techniques and so on, and really getting people more stress resistant, I suppose. But it's probably a mistake to avoid stress. In fact, we need stress in order to build resilience. So really the definition of resilience is stress and the right amount of stress, but plus adequate recovery, and that special combination equals resilience. So we need to expose ourselves to stresses, be it exercise or tough endeavors and projects and talks like this, I suppose, as as methods to push ourselves forward and then from which, with recovery and repair and the right nutrients, we can become more resilient. In the case of the sore knees, what we've got there is a bit of a wear and tear. So there's a physical source of stress, and exercise is a physical source of stress, and lots of individuals in the real world will be getting into running a bit more, triathlons, maybe CrossFit, stuff like that. Some people are getting into these activities in their 50s, 60s, but really if you're suddenly jumping into this, you're going to be putting a lot more stress on your tissues, joints, ligaments, tendons, and that needs to be supported with the right kind of nutrition, the right foods, and ultimately often the right supplements as well. So in terms of how we sort of approach all this, well, it's a systems biology approach. That means you look at a system such as inflammation, immune, circulation, hormonal, and then you do what you can to set up the right kind of scenario where people start feeling and performing at their absolute best. And some of the time you can actually feel a little bit limitless, but without any of the downsides, without any of the side effects. Now, one thing which is quite important when we're talking about all these nutritional protocols and so on is you have to get the basics right first. And one of the essential foundational or cornerstones, pillars of performance, they're called lots of different things really, but really it's a fundamental mechanism which has to be right in order to perform at your best, and that's hydration. It's just drinking enough water. And I spend a lot of my time getting people into the habits and rituals of drinking water regularly. Now, this is one of the early phases of behavior change. So, setting up rituals and behaviors is sometimes referred to as metaprogramming. It's a phrase programmers use for computers. They write a bit of code, the computer sorts problems out because it has the right code, and humans are similar. If you can set up the right rituals and habits, then that code, i.e. that ability to drink water regularly, means that individual is never going to be severely dehydrated, hopefully. And that, all other things being equal, if you're coming up against an opponent or another team and they haven't got these metaprogramming and behavioral change and cultural norms in place, then the ones with the better culture are ultimately going to have the better habits, and then they're going to have an edge on their competition. This is quite a nice stat, the 3% dehydration, 10% loss of strength, 8% loss of speed. Of course, it ties in with concentration, lower levels of stress hormones and things like that. You can hydrate, with herb teas, dilute fruit juices even, but actually it's the minerals which make a big difference. So it's the sodium, the chloride, the potassium and the magnesium, even things like bicarbonate and things like that. Those are the things which are going to help that water retain inside the tissues, and that strategy is sometimes known as a hyperhydration strategy, where you can actually take on and use a bit more water than you would do otherwise if you hadn't got the electrolytes in place. This is something that happens a lot, particularly in extra time, football games. If you're not following a good cramping protocol, then this could cost you a test match, it could cost you a match. So this is a cramping protocol I've used with actually 100% success rate over the last 20 years. It took a while to develop and build, obviously, as these things do, through trial and error. But effectively, you have to go through a checklist, and this is often the way when you're improving someone's performance. You start with the ministry of the bleeding obvious, and then you build deeper into the levels of complexity about what system might be out of balance, which is causing them a problem. So first thing obviously is just water. If they haven't drunk enough water, they could be dehydrated. This is going to cause a muscle not to function properly and potentially cramp up. Second thing is salt. Lack of salt is commonly associated with more dehydration. In fact, having the electrolytes that I was speaking about before means that you can maintain hydration on about 25% less fluid intake. So it really does make your hydration much more efficient. One of the most commonly deficient minerals in today's society, magnesium. Actually, chronic vitamin D deficiency is also associated with cramps, and magnesium and vitamin D work together. We'll be testing the bloods of many athletes frequently to look at levels and top them up to optimum. Look, if you're unfit and you try and do something crazy, like a marathon, and you've only been used to running a mile, you're probably going to cramp up. Your muscles just aren't conditioned to the level of activity. So that's a bottom line thing you've got to tick off. But if you're always getting imbalances in a muscle, could be tightness, could be something neural, you've got to see a physio, see a specialist, check all that out. And then local muscular endurance. If you put your 1 foot on the stair and go full range up, down, it's quite hard to do 25 full range calf raises, and that's the kind of level you need to have good conditioning in the calves to prevent dehydration in that prevent cramping in that muscle. So this is quite an interesting one, because it's quite cold outside today, but earlier this year it was really quite hot. Now, understanding your environment is vital. So I guess doing your analysis, but environmental temperatures will massively alter the amount of fluid you lose in response to exercise. Now, here's an example of taken from a rugby club, and at 15 degrees you'll lose about up to a litre for an hour and a bit of exercise, but at 25 degrees you're going to lose 2.5 litres. I actually put a sauna suit on up at the local Thai boxing club. 45 minutes later, 2.2 kg down. Massive losses in a high humid, high heat environment. And you'll begin to feel that, as you lose fluid, you will lose the ability to perform. And if you lose 5% of your mass, you're gonna really bottom out in terms of your endurance performance. So, nice little entry series of tips and tricks on hydration. What about sleeping? So obviously we can't get away without sleeping. The body has to sleep. Now, the reason for that is it's a rest and repair. So we physically repair and we emotionally and mentally repair. The physical repair stages is the early phases of sleep, and it's probably a survival mechanism there, because if you can only sleep for 3 hours and you've released all your growth hormone, etc., then you can get up and you can run around. You're just not going to feel mentally very capable, and over time that can really affect your emotional stability, memory, depression, all those other things that good sleep's shown to prevent. Now, it really is a magic bullet. So if it was up to me, I'd put 2 daily sleeps on the national curriculum. I think all the hot temperate countries have got it exactly right. Siesta time all the way. Now, if I said to you, there's a pill, it can make you leaner, increase feel-good hormones, testosterone, reduce inflammation, reduce blood sugar, improve memory, reduce dementia risk, you'd take it straight away. And sleep is that magic pill. It is that magic bullet. It's proven time and time again to be deep restful sleep is one key way we can improve the performance of humans and athletes. Now this slide shows the cycles of sleep. This is interesting because we basically sleep in 90-minute sleep cycles. So these are important to understand. Now, as I said before, the first sleep cycles are based on recovery, and the subsequent sleep cycles are based on emotional memory and cognitive recovery. Each sleep cycle lasts about 90 minutes, so actually you'd be better off getting 6 hours than you would 6.5. This is one reason why you can wake up a little bit groggy if you wake up halfway through a subsequent sleep cycle, or sometimes you wake up feeling quite fresh at say 5 a.m. You fall back asleep, alarm goes off at 6, and you feel like you're really groggy and it's really hard to get up. So if you can time these sleep cycles approximately, then that's going to go a long way for you to feel really good. And there's some apps and things that can help you stir at the right time when you're in a lighter sleep cycle. You can catch up later, but if you're having a snooze later, it's probably a good idea to either have a quick snooze, so that's less than 20 up to 20 minutes, so 5 minutes to fall asleep, 20 minutes snooze, 5 minutes to come around and make yourself a cup of tea. Then you don't go into a deep sleep. Those can be quite restorative too. And then if you've got a good block of time and you're managing your own days, which we can do more of that kind of thing in lockdown, actually, working more from home, then you could plan, if you've really had a short sleep the night before, say 6 hours, you could plan to top up with a 90-minute sleep, so you're getting your full 3 sleep cycles there. Now, little sleep hacks. There's lots of really good nutrients which will ensure that you get into a deeper, more restful sleep. They can calm the mind in the evening. They can encourage the body to release more serotonin and melatonin. They can encourage the body to release a hormone called GABA, such as magnesium. And all of these, I think it's a good idea to have a little sleep box. And this is where you've got a few different things all in a box that you can cycle. You don't really need to cycle minerals as much as you do herbs. So 5-HTP is a serotonin precursor. That comes in my mind from the sort of herbal plant derived kingdom of support. Valerian's obviously a herb. Magnesium, zinc, and so on are minerals, and they can be used more consistently. I've actually put a lot of these into a nice tasting powder called R5 Aminos, and that's been consistently shown to assist athletes' recovery and repair and deep sleep. Taking a little bit from Chinese medicine and the stages of detoxification. There's more actual studies showing the circadian rhythm and the processes the body goes through when you sleep. But actually, if you wake within an hour, that's often rebound hypoglycemia. So it's the sugary snack before bed or too much wine. Wine can also cause waking within 3 hours, liver detoxification. Then this is a very common one. People waking from 3 to 5 a.m. So basically, if you're under prolonged stress, your ability to make cortisol will gradually diminish. Cortisol is a low-acting adrenaline, so it will keep your blood glucose stable. So if you can imagine, in the night, if you're lacking cortisol, your blood glucose will drop, your adrenaline will kick in, and then you can wake up with that rapid heart rate feeling, and that can sometimes take 90 minutes before you can slip back into sleep. It's a really commonly reported symptom, and it's all about supporting stress and recovery and adrenal health. And a couple of quick hacks. Licorice tea doubles the half-life of cortisol, so a light cup of licorice tea before you go to bed, that can help. Or taking a slow release protein, or with a little bit of peanut butter or something like that, just to keep the blood sugar levels stable, or give the body something to work on in terms of using a bit of fat for energy while you're sleeping. Here's some of the pathways explained in a bit more detail. So here we can see some of the nutrients that I spoke about. Here are the mechanisms and pathways. Always important to explain mechanisms and pathways so that you get buy-in from the people you're helping. You know, if people can, and if there isn't a clear mechanism or pathway, and someone's offering you food or a supplement, then obviously you have to question it. One thing I have noticed is actually including antioxidants will reduce inflammation, and if you reduce inflammation, that appears to help deep restful sleep. reducing inflammation and oxidative stress can prolong the survival of some of the hormones in the blood. Possibly that's a mechanism as well. So there's lots of little sleep hacks. I mean, keeping on task and on message, we have to keep to the ministry of the bleeding obvious, and that is, you know, not having a double espresso at 10 o'clock at night, not doing anything crazy and stimulating late at night, the blue light stuff, you know, all the sleep hygiene tips and tricks. There's thousands of places you can find really good information on that on the internet, and you have to do that in conjunction with eating the right foods and taking the right supplements. So moving on from sleep. Now this is good. I mean, would this be the key to solving the obesity and the diabetes epidemic? Possibly. In terms of how this helps athletes, what this does is makes people more efficient at using the fuel they've got. So if you imagine that we've all got lots of body fat, even if you're only a couple of percent over your leanest, you're still going to have a hell of a lot of body fat and a hell of a lot of energy to burn. So being good at burning fat is a really good skill. The problem is that most of us are actually not that good at burning fat, and that's as a result of sitting around eating too many carbohydrates as a percentage in terms of our macronutrients, so protein, fat and carbs, and also just not moving enough. We just don't walk enough, we don't take enough steps. Now there's a lot of research coming out on fat adaptation, intermittent fasting, and these are all, and keto diets, obviously low carb diets, these are all playing to the strengths of enhancing this fat burning system and making it more efficient. The truth is, it's actually good to be mostly in here, but also with the ability to burn these really quick when you need it. And if you spend all your time in here, you do lose your ability to burn sugars really efficiently. The enzymes that you use to make carbohydrates into energy quickly will downregulate. So spending 70 to 80% of your time in here, then eating some carbs and then running around like a loony is a good way of keeping both systems super efficient. When you start out, you often need to spend a lot more time in this fat burning zone. So all this boils back down to how our body makes energy, and the energy currency of the cell is called ATP, and you get it from breaking down fat, breaking down carbs, and also by using something called creatine. But we won't talk about creatine today. We're really just talking about fat and carbohydrates. Now, carbs provides ATP really quick, but it doesn't last that long. So if you use it up really fast, you'll last a minute and a half, 2 minutes before it's all run out if you're exercising at your maximum intensity. Whereas fat can just go on and on and on forever. Now, you can actually train yourself to use fat at up to actually 70% of your VO2 max. It's called your fat max, was shown in one study. But for most people, you're going to be, before they've started, they might only be using fat up to 50% of their VO2 max. And when you train, you might go up to 65. But that's still quite good. That means you can do quite a lot of stuff like jogging and things like that, and weights and things, by primarily using fat and then dipping into your creatine system depending on the length of the sets and the intensity of the reps and so on. So this slide shows how long you can use that fuel for, how quickly it runs out, and how we can train those systems by eating the right kind of ratio of protein, fat and carbohydrates in order to keep ourselves healthy. Now, I won't go into some of the hacks in terms of the special kind of carbohydrates which can go into the body really, really quickly. How quickly you eat your carbs depends on how quickly they end up in the cells. But really, this is all about a balance between how much energy you take in order to perform at your maximum versus how much you want to be fat adapting your athletes at any given time. Now, one thing that's important to understand on this in this area is the management of insulin. So this all ties into insulin management. Now, insulin is released in response to carbohydrates. If you have too many of the wrong types of carbs, you produce too much insulin. If you do that too much, you become insulin resistant. Then you can't use your fat for fuel. So what you've got to do is choose the right kind of slow release carbohydrates with a higher emphasis on good fats, moderate protein, and a lower overall intake in terms of percentage of carbohydrates in the diet. And that's the cornerstone to the low glycemic diet, the zone diet, the South Beach diet. All those diets will actually lower the amount of insulin that you produce in order for you to better enable your body to use fat as a source of fuel. This one is quite interesting because I drew this over 22 years ago, but it's still absolutely relevant today, and you can see that it's actually becoming more relevant because of the diabetes and obesity epidemic that we're in at the moment. So it's a summary slide really. This is all the hormones, nutrients that help enable our body to process sugars properly, many of which are commonly deficient in terms of trace minerals, B vitamins and so on, and then the types of habit we can follow in order to reduce the glycemic impact of a particular meal. Now I won't dwell on this. There's a little bit of text that you can use if you're writing any of this stuff up, if you're hopefully finding it interesting. I do find this massively interesting. Creating fat burning athletes that can function at high intensity when they're carbohydrate fueled is probably one of the holy grails of performance. Here's a little protocol on the type of habits you begin to employ in order to shift yourself more into fat. Obviously, almost all of it depends on energy balance. So it's going to be, you're going to need to go into a deficit for a high proportion of your week, and then choose the right macronutrient split in order to maintain that deficit. Some special fats, coconut oil or medium chain triglycerides, burn a bit higher intensity than your standard longer chain fatty acids. They're medium chain, so they burn a little bit easier, a little bit quicker, perhaps at a little bit higher intensity of exercise. And it's all this is a lot of theory. You can go to a lab and get your metabolic flexibility profile measured. You can actually now measure this at home. So there's a neat little device called Lumen. I've been having a dabble with it for a few months, and it actually appears to give some pretty accurate data on what the primary source of fuel your body's using at a particular time. So you can use that in conjunction with making some alterations to your macronutrient ratio. It's a good little helping hand, as it were, if you don't want to shell out on lots of lab visits, or you just haven't got access to lab. Obviously, in this present environment, it's harder to do that. So what I'd like to do now, we'll switch on to something called inflammation. So this is something that's spoken about a lot, isn't it? It's a funny one, really, because every time you say it, people often go, well, what is it? Well, it's really the body's method of traveling the immune system around the body. So it's required for healing. It's required for moving the immune system around, as I said. It's required, for recovery from exercise. And actually, the more efficient your immune system and the more regulated your inflammation is, i.e. optimizing your inflammation, then the better state of health you're going to be in. A lot of this depends on eating the right kind of fats. So omega-3 versus omega-6, we'll come on to that in a minute. A lot of it revolves around reducing oxidative stress from eating lots of pigment-based foods, polyphenols, bioflavonoids, the good stuff in plants which gives them all their pigment. And as in the example of the rugby player, if you get it right, it can really help reduce inflammation and pain and speed up recovery from high intensity exercise. So here's some of the ideas that will help with reduction in inflammation. One is getting the right kind of nutrients in directly after you've finished training, because then you can start the rebuilding and repair process. Otherwise inflammation can just be prolonged until that process is begun. You need to eat tons of veg. We'll spend quite a lot of time talking about veg in a moment. Tons of fish, and take fish oil supplements. And then you've got specialist things like curcumin, fish oils, cherry juice, things like that. Now here's the crux of it. If you're eating too much omega-6, so basically standard British diet, cakes, biscuits, confectionery, pastries, fried food, anything commercially baked, is going to have a high level of omega-6 fats, and those in excess and out of balance with omega-3 force the body to produce more pro-inflammatory hormones. Now, so it's a good idea to avoid one of the nation's most sought after snacks, and that's crisps. But it's also things like donuts, chips, and anything fried. So a lot of fast food, a lot of restaurants, there's going to be a lot of omega-6 in that food. Increase all your good fats, oily fish, omega eggs, olive oil, which is omega-9 but helps omega-3. Walnuts are better than other nuts in terms of their 3:6 ratio. And what this will do, wild food is better because it eats the right stuff. So commercially raised salmon, they actually had a conversation with someone the other day who was making fish oils, and one of their biggest customers, guess who? Salmon farmers. Unbelievable. The farm salmon doesn't have any omega-3 in it anymore because there's none in the feed. So they're having to give the salmon excuse me, omega-3 supplements in order that it has omega-3 in its flesh. And the benefits are widespread. If you put omega-3 human health in any Medline search engine, you'd literally get thousands of studies supporting its use. We can measure inflammation in the blood. You can also go from symptoms. There's some clear inflammatory markers in the blood: IL-6, creatine kinase, TNF-alpha, high reactivity markers, high sensitivity markers. There's more functionally beneficial omega-3 to 6 ratio, vitamin D, Raman spectrometry, which is a device which measures your antioxidant status, and then things like how much testosterone you're producing in relation to stress hormones like cortisol. All important. Now, inflammation will tie into fat loss, in that the more inflammation in the body, the more you're likely to be insulin resistant. And this has been known about literally for over 100 years. So salicylates in vegetables, it's the good stuff in the skin in vegetables, actually much higher in organic veg, will lower insulin resistance. So another reason to eat your veg. The pathways that produce the pro-inflammatory hormones, omega-6, if it gets overloaded here, will produce pro-inflammatory prostaglandins. They're little hormones which make inflammation worse. And then the omega-3 will produce lots of anti-inflammatory hormones. And the pathways are very reliant on trace minerals, which again are commonly deficient in a standard Western diet. Okay, so what about immune system function? Well, I think it's important to say with immune system function, we've got two levels of defense. We've got a first line of defense and then a more adaptive, slow response. And it's perhaps a cleverer response. The first line of defense is indiscriminate, but vital. Obviously, if stuff gets in, then your body's got to really think about how it's going to deal with it. If you can keep it out, then that's going to be even better. And that relies on protecting your mucous membranes, increasing the activity of natural killer cells, and so on, and actually to a certain extent maintaining good hydration status will also help with that. Now we have to really think about obvious stuff first. Wash your hands, wear your mask, obviously at the moment. Take your vitamin D, that is so vital. Now sleep again will moderate a proper immune response, and then not being deficient in any particular area, and eating plenty of protein, because your immune system is built from proteins. Now we get ill in the winter, basically it's not because it suddenly gets cold necessarily, it's just because we all go inside. So temperate regions where it rains a lot, even if it's hot, their flu spikes go up when they all have to go inside when it begins raining much more. So that's one of the reasons. Like, gathering too many people inside just enables these viruses and stuff like that to spread. Hence all these lockdown measures trying to keep us from intermingling too much indoors. So take homes in a nutshell, if you like: protect your mucous membranes, enhance natural killer cells, primarily through mushroom extracts, actually, things like reishi, shiitake, lion's mane. All these lovely Chinese medicinal mushrooms are really good at enhancing natural killer cell response, as is something called beta-glucan, which you can get from things like oats. Vitamin D is essential, and then there's cofactors which are required for normal immune system function. Zinc, Vit C. Zinc can be taken as a lozenge, actually, because virus it will lodge into viruses and kill them. So if you're sucking on a zinc lozenge and you've got virus in your mouth and your throat, then that will tend to help kill it off. It's important to stay happy, so there's no doubt that low serotonin will suppress immune system function. That's one of the ways that vitamin D works, is it stops your serotonin going too low in the winter, and that means that the immune system cells are better, they can discover things better. It's, lack of vitamin D can make them a little bit more blind, so it takes them longer to for the adaptive immune response to kick in. But really, yeah, staying happy and supporting your immune system is one of the best ways to become more resilient and increase your stress hardiness. And that really involves, looking on the bright side of life, not trying your best not to get overly down in the dumps, which is super difficult, especially at challenging times like at the moment. So what this boils down to effectively is 3 levels of risk, I suppose. We need a general optimum diet, good recovery, good sleep, good hygiene. If we're going into high risk periods, you want to be double sure you're taking everything you can. So lots of vitamin D, vitamin C when you're going out, maybe zinc lozenge if you're feeling a little bit, like you're maybe long haul travel. That would be a time when we're allowed to do that again. That you take extra precautions and do extra immune system boosting. And in terms of the types of nutrients that would boil down to, well, here's some of them that should work well: Vit D, probiotics, glutamine, colostrum, zinc lozenge. I actually make a really good mushroom extract with berry extracts, and that was shown to virtually bring the respiratory tract infections at one of the Premiership's best football clubs down from an average of 8 and 9 in the winter season down to 1. So that clearly works in conjunction with the vitamin D protocol. This slide's quite scary. This shows that if you're severely deficient in vitamin D, this is far more likely to cause severe and critical COVID-19 outcomes. So make sure you basically take as much vitamin D as you can to get your levels above 75 nanomoles per litre. Really good idea. You can get at-home testing kits if you're worried. Otherwise, take 2,000 to 4,000 units most days throughout the winter months, and take it in the summer too if you're inside a lot. So here's some of the mechanisms and studies to support some of the stuff I've been talking about, and you can see here that this kind of science goes back a long time. Really we're talking about stuff that's been known about for over 25 years, but it's only really coming to fruition and common knowledge now. Probably one of the best things the government could do at the moment is a nationwide vitamin D supplementation program. Now, here's the immune powder I was talking about. So this is what we used to do with athletes is prepare them like a 7-day immune pack and put everything in it, loads of tablets. But to make life easier, we just took it all out, stuck it in a powder, and then they can put that in a drink, stick an electrolyte tablet in it, and take that once a day to support and prevent illness, and then up to 3 times or even a little bit more than that if you're feeling a little bit sick and unwell. Now here's one which is reliant on someone knowing how to cook a really good chicken broth. But chicken soup has actually been shown to support immune system function and actually is a really good source of collagen. So collagen's really important for anything in the body that needs to be bouncy, resilient and strong. Joints, ligaments, tendons, skin. So there's lots of good reasons to take plenty of collagen through foods, and if you're not into chicken soup and that sort of stuff, then you're probably going to need to rely on a supplement. If you're injured, you probably need to do both. So there's some really good research on collagen now, showing that it reduces severity of injury, assists in rehab, and may even have an injury preventative type effect as well. So, quick one on lifestyle habits, stuff we know. I personally wouldn't train myself into the ground for 2 hours and then go to a busy place or down the underground, because high intensity training does suppress the immune system. So in those particular times, it's get yourself home, take your immune stuff, rest and recover, let the immune system pick back up before you're going to expose yourself to multiple sources of germs and viruses and so on. Right, so we got a little bit of time left. And what I'd like to finish on is the concept of acid-alkaline balance. So basically, you may have heard of this. So pH, it'll take you back to your sort of chemistry lessons at school a little bit, but we have different pH in the body. So stomach is obviously highly acidic, blood has to be and is made neutral, and we have various compensatory mechanisms to ensure that particularly the blood pH stays within normal ranges. And actually, you could eat all the acidic food in the world that you want, and the blood pH is actually going to stay the same. But what it will do is it will put more stress on the compensatory mechanisms, and that's just biochemistry. It's just what happens. So if we can measure the level of acidity in foods now, Now this is newer stuff than old-fashioned acid alkaline food lists that you see. This is actual measurable stuff. So it's called potential renal acid load. They measure the acid alkaline ash that's created from different foods that you might eat, and proteins and grains tend to be slightly acidic, whereas fruits and vegetables tend to be slightly alkaline. What happens when we ingest these types of food is you will digest them. If you're eating loads of these ones, you'll create a slightly more acid ash, and then you'll have compensatory mechanisms which kick in. And this is an interesting one, isn't it? You get a little bit more out of breath if you're slightly acidic. Obviously, severe states of metabolic acidosis or alkalosis are severe medical states, and you need to get to a doctor. But what we're talking about now is a low-grade state. Whereas if you're slightly acidic for long periods of time, what effect does that have on your physiology? Well, it's certainly going to put more stress on these compensatory mechanisms, and anything that puts more stress on the body's mechanisms has the potential to reduce the body's ability to produce enough energy. So one thing that some people believe is that a high acid diet can contribute to feelings of fatigue and so on. Here's the list of the average Prowl scores. So what we can see here is that if you like steak, then you basically need to eat 3 times the amount of veg by weight. So 100 grams of steak, 300 grams of vegetables. You're going to stay in a balanced state. You're not going to be forcing the body to compensate in terms of too much acid and so on. So you'll see here some foods, different things. Tap water is neutral. Alkaline water we'll come on to in a minute. Slightly alkaline. Then you've got stomach acid, severely acidic, vinegar, orange juice and so on. So a little bit of unraveling to do around orange and lemon juice here. Now, I'd agree with this that you shouldn't be worried about eating acidic foods. You really shouldn't. You just should eat enough alkaline foods to balance them out. Simple. And I think it's a mistake to a real mistake to completely avoid acidic foods. It just causes imbalance and it's too extreme. Here we've got some of the research, which I'll come on to more in a moment. Here's the exercise intensity that you can produce if you eat a slightly higher alkaline diet. So basically you can exercise at high intensity if you eat an alkaline diet, and your time to exhaustion can improve. And that's probably one of the reasons, because when you exercise really hard you produce a lot of lactate, and if you've got an alkaline environment you're going to buffer the lactate a little bit better. And what they did in this study is they basically ate about 12 cups of alkaline veg with some rice, which is neutral, and then really no acidic foods at all. So it was extreme, but they got extreme improvement in their performance. They got their protein from a bit of rice and I think a bit of whey protein. So for me, this acid alkaline balance is interesting. It clearly affects physiology. It clearly enhances performance. And for me, it's another tool to get people to eat more alkaline foods. So eat loads of veg, eat fruit, and I'm always telling people to eat maybe 9 portions of vegetables, 3 portions of fruit. There's not really anything bad in veg, and the more you eat, the less likely you are to die of any cause. So all cause mortality goes down and then tails off at about 9 servings a day, and that's probably because the effect that vegetables have on lowering your blood pressure, because they contain alkaline minerals such as magnesium. They contain nitrates, which open up blood vessels, so it reduces your blood pressure. They contain tons of antioxidants, which lowers oxidative stress, which lowers inflammation. They contain fibre, which keeps your bowel healthy. They contain all the bioflavonoids, polyphenols, interact with collagen, so that can even make the collagen more effective in the body. And there's probably it's no coincidence that all the longest lived societies in the world have a high intake of lovely organic veg and lots and lots of it. They also take in quite a lot of omega-3, and they're outside a lot, so they get lots of vitamin D. And there's a little interaction there, a special interaction which helps keep humans healthy. And just delve into the science a little bit more, because like I said, it is, if you put acid alkaline into a search engine, you'll get lots of fours and lots of this is a myth, there's no such thing, it doesn't affect physiology, it won't leach calcium, all these things. And then there's actually some good science showing no, it does. This is just what happens. You can't argue against mechanisms, and you can't argue against biochemical processes and compensatory mechanisms that have to go in place if your body is too out of balance. This is a review 10 years ago. It showed a link between alkaline diet, levels of magnesium, activating vitamin D, high levels of growth hormone in kids, benefits to both bone health, reduced muscle wasting. Now it's important to note that it's very hard to extrapolate the alkalinity away from the goodness that's just in vegetables. Now that is quite difficult. More research needs to be done in that area, but if you consume a pure alkaline solution like bicarbonate, then it still does have the positive effects. A couple more studies showing that a net acid diet is bad for diabetes, even in lean individuals, making the case for having better insulin management and actually using things like bicarbonate, which could be an adjunct to getting leaner and building more muscle. The 4 to 9 day study that I showed you the graph of before showed a time to exhaustion, improved fat burning, and actually improved use of oxygen during training. Big study in Furukawa, the nutrition and health study, showed that this is a very large study, 1,732 subjects aged 19 to 69. They looked at dietary acid load and markers of insulin resistance, and they found that the higher the potential renal acid load, the more likely they were to be insulin resistant. So really what we're seeing now is, the weight of the evidence is in support for health and longevity and sports performance is in support of an alkaline diet. And actually alkaline water can support that. So if you've got an ultra pure water source with added magnesium, sodium bicarb and potassium bicarb, then you've got an ability to aid the body in maintaining a balanced PRAL, or even leaning towards a slightly alkaline PRAL intake. So it's an easy, very tasty way to keep the body in an alkaline environment. Now I've been, how many years have I had a home water filter? A long time. My home water filter completely cleans all the horrible stuff that's in most water, so it gets rid of anything that shouldn't be there. But ultra pure water is lacking in minerals, so the good home water filter systems will also remineralize that water with the potassium, bicarb, magnesium and so on. And so, and that's at home use. But if I'm out and about, then I'm going to want something that's a little bit more portable. And active water is just a simple and affordable way that someone can do that. So good stuff. So that was quite a little bit longer than it'll probably be in the one-to-ones. But I look forward to speaking to you in there. If you've heard this already, then you can think up some questions. If you want to contact myself or Charlotte with any questions, then please do so. Thank you very much for listening. Bye.